The people that are making it happen, the people that are successful and are quitting their jobs and doing music full time are the ones that are just building real relationships with people that listen to their music. And you just listen to these guys talk about their experiences and friendships that they make with people that are listening to their music. They're their customers.
Welcome to the Music Business Facts Podcast, where successful music industry experts share their industry secrets that will help you take your music career to the next level.
How's it going, everybody? Rodney is my name, and thanks once again for joining me here at Music Business Facts. I really do appreciate your time. And before I get into my interview today, I just want to send out a quick plug for my free online music industry training course that I've done with successful music entrepreneur, Mr. Andy Farrow. Andy's one of my mentors. He's also one of the most successful music entrepreneurs I know. And his free course, it's full of great strategies, great information, all really good stuff that you can implement into your music business right now. So if you'd like to hear my mastermind session with Mr. Andy Farrow, and if you didn't know, he manages amazing bands like Devin Townsend and Opeth and Paradise Lost and all these great metal bands. Anyhow, like I said, 100% free. Go to musicbusinesslecture.com. musicbusinesslecture.com. Check it out, consume the information, and please get back to me and let me know what you think. Okay, and speaking of music and entrepreneurship, my guest today is Mr. James Newcomb, and James hosts musicpreneur.com podcast. So another really great resource for you guys. James had me on his show a couple of weeks ago, and I thought I'd return the favor and introduce him to you guys. I always like to say that there's certainly not one way of becoming successful in the music industry. And similarly, there's also certainly not one person who can give you all the answers on how to succeed in any business, particularly the music industry. So I think it's really important to consume as much as you possibly can, to learn as much as you possibly can from as many people as you possibly can. And that's why I wanted to introduce you guys to James. And hopefully some of you will go out and check out his podcast. Anyhow, I'm not going to muck around today. We had a cool little interview, so I'm going to flick it right over to the content, and you can have a listen with my chat with Mr. James Newcomb. Check it out. Well, ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is Mr. James Newcomb, and James is renowned as being the main man behind musicpreneur.com podcast. He also hosts another podcast called Trumpet Dynamics, which is also really taking off. James, you're all the way over in North Carolina. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well, and from what I understand, it's morning where you are, so good morning to you.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, it's 8 o'clock in the morning for me. It's a little bit of a rainy day here in Brisbane, but I'm looking forward to speaking with you, mate.
Yeah, let's have some fun.
James, for any of my listeners who don't know much about you, I've given you them a little bit of an intro about you, but tell us a little bit about yourself personally, and then we'll get into your podcasts and the stuff you're doing in the music business.
Yeah, I was in the U.S. Army for about 12 years in 2 different stints. And so the vast majority of my professional career as a musician was in the military. And I left the military 2 years ago, and I just knew that entrepreneurship was, that was my destiny. And I didn't know exactly how it was going to look. Or what path I would go in, but I knew that I liked podcasting because I had done some audiobooks previously, made a little bit of money doing that, but I just really fell in love with the medium of podcasting. I did it sort of as a hobby when I was in the military, and I just knew that 1, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, and 2, I'm going to be a podcaster, and so I started Trumpet Dynamics. Literally days after leaving the military. In fact, I recorded my first interview when I was still in Korea in the Army. And less than 3 weeks after leaving the Army, I'm putting out new episodes of this podcast. And long story short, I'm just kind of... Oh.
There you go.
Sorry.
You can't get that, James. You're talking to me, mate.
Sorry about that.
That's fine.
All right. So I'm just doing this thing and just feeling my way through this crazy thing called the internet and being an entrepreneur. Of course, leaving the military as a drastic change. You're going from a steady income to no income. And, but I just knew this is what this is what I'm put on this earth to do, is to help people somehow with a podcast.
Cool.
And, so I spent a day with John Lee Dumas, who you know, and I think we're both members of Podcasters Paradise. And I took him up on his offer of his Kickstarter campaign, an offer to spend a day with him. And that is when the idea of Musicpreneur came into being. It was just kind of brainstorming, kind of masterminding together. And I can't remember who came up with the idea, but it was like we just looked at each other and said, there it is. That's what it is, because I had shared some of my observations of the trumpet community and just how there was a real lack of real knowledge on what exactly do you do with this talent that you spend so much time refining. And so that's just sort of how the business came into being, and launched the first episode of Musicpreneur about 6 months after that. So I've been going strong with that. Went to 5 days a week this past January, and honestly, I wish I had started that way, because it's such a blast, such a ton of fun, and every interview I learned something new, and just love where I am with my life right now.
That's awesome, James. That's great. And of course, podcast is such a powerful medium. I love it as well. But I can't imagine doing it 5 days a week. And you also run two podcasts, which is crazy. How do you manage that? How do you, I suppose, make sure you've got enough content that people are going to be interested and engaged in? And B, how do you actually manage the dynamics? I know you've got a young family. How do you do it all? Have you got any tips for me?
Well, the key that I've discovered was with both podcasts, there's a couple of keys. The first is that, like, entrepreneurship is my game. That's my thing. It's not like I know everything there is to know about being an entrepreneur as a musician, but that's like where I've decided to focus I want to be a specialist in that. And so what I did with Trumpet Dynamics is now we're just focusing on how do you get gigs? Like, that's the main focus of the podcast, and the Facebook page and the Facebook group and Instagram. And it's like, that's the main focal point. How do trumpet players get gigs? And that, even with all of there's a ton of Facebook groups dedicated to the trumpet, but none of them talk about how do you get gigs. And it's like, doesn't that strike you as odd that everybody's talking just about equipment and this and that, but no one's really talking about how to get gigs? So, interestingly enough, it's a way for us to stick out from the crowd. And the second thing is, I brought a couple of specialists on board. One handles the email marketing, and the other is doing a dynamite job with social media. So I'm not doing everything myself, and it's really taking off since we brought these new team members on.
And that's smart. Did you find those team members locally, or are these people, quite often they're in the Philippines or on Fiverr? Do you want to share any of those tips? Or the email gal, I can't remember how I met her or where. We just met up. We met online, but I send an email to my list just about every day, and she does the same. And we're in some of the same circles with coaching and some of the just the same circles online. So I came to know of her. She is doing she was doing some email marketing specifically to trumpet players, and so it seemed like a good fit to bring her on to sort of join forces. And then, just out of the clear blue sky, this guy, his name is Troy, he I think he sent me a friend request, or I sent him a friend request, I don't remember what happened, on Facebook, and instantly he sends me a message saying, "James, it's great to meet you on Facebook." Just really, really genuine, really authentic. And I thought, this guy must have a band that he's promoting that he wants me to like their page or something. Because he just struck me as that type of spirit, that entrepreneurial spirit, like get people excited about what I'm doing.
And it turns out he just wanted to be friendly. And so I said, well, do you want a job? I've got this podcast going and I need someone to help with social media. Would you be willing to do it? So I have given up. I mean, we're like business partners. So once the revenue comes in, we'll split it 3 ways. And I'm fine with that because it's more of a passion project.
That's
Never
cool.
intended to pay my bills with it anyway. So it's a good way for me to learn some things.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask, so you're essentially in business with these 2 other people, and it's like a 33 1/3 split or something.
Yeah, on the trumpet side, musicpreneur is all me.
And just before we get onto your podcast and the music content, which I'm assuming most of my listeners were really going to want to latch onto, I wanted to ask you, when you get somebody in to manage your email accounts, how do you hand over that trust? How do you say, here's my passwords, here's my logins, take my stuff and be my voice for me? Or, that's the one thing that I'm struggling with, because everyone's telling me I need a team because my business is growing. But things like that, I'm just curious if you could give me some insights into, do you just have to let it go? Is it as easy as that, or what do you think?
Well, I knew her, and like I said, we had this rapport, and over time we had gotten to know each other a little bit. We'd exchange emails. Like she would send an email just randomly, just one of her daily emails, and I would just respond, just being friendly, because I knew that she's of like mind and she plays the same instrument and basically has the same mission in life. So we did have that rapport when I approached her on this. Now, I just said, you know what? I have a small email list of trumpet players. I'm just going to hand it over to you. And this is your baby. Like, I just completely said, you do it. I know you're good at it. And I trust that you're gonna represent us well. So yeah, for me it was as easy as just letting go, because I knew that she would represent me well, because she had proven that.
Okay, cool. And you email your list every day. I find that very interesting. Do you find that you get a high unsubscribe rate because everyone's obviously getting smashed in their inbox? I certainly wouldn't have the audacity to do that to my list, just because I know there's email fatigue.
No, you're right. Well, there's this guy named Ben Settle that I like. You can find him at bensettle.com, and he advocates emailing your list daily. And the unsubscribes aren't as high as you would think. In fact, I have found that regularly I get between 35 and 40% open rates.
Which is fantastic for anyone who doesn't know about email open rates.
Every day.
Wow.
So if I'm sending an email to 100 people, just to put a number out there, I know that 40 people are opening my email every day.
That's cool.
And every now and then somebody unsubscribes, and Weber says, "What's your reason?" And says, "It's too many emails." What they're really saying is, "James, I'm just not into you," and that's fine. I don't. If you're not into me, then I don't like happy trails.
Yeah, well, exactly.
But there's plenty of people that are into me, and people are, joining the list. Definitely joining more than people leave.
That's great. That's great, James. All right, let's get into some what I'll call meat and potatoes of the podcast interview. I want to try and see if I can extract some real sort of gold nuggets for my listeners from your brain, because you're doing this daily and you're dealing with all these people. And as we both know, it's a fantastic way to not only meet people and network, but also to learn stuff. I'm going to go back to your basic premise of what you talked about before with your trumpet podcast. And that's, how do you get gigs? And let's make this more general for the general audience, because a lot of people starting out, that is a very legitimate enigma for them. I'm playing, I'm performing, I'm perhaps getting pretty good. James, have you got any advice? How do you get a gig? What are some of the great takeaways that you could pass on to my listeners today?
Well, first of all, you have to attend. You have to be active in the local scene. Like, I just moved here to Raleigh, North Carolina, about a year and a half ago, and I got active in the scene. And disclaimer here: I'm not a full-time musician. It's like podcasting has become my instrument. I do gig, but music is not my main source of income. I just want to be upfront with that. But the first thing I did when I got here was I called up the principal trumpet player in the local symphony, because I'm a classical player. Mm-hmm. If I have my druthers, like if I had a choice, that's what I would do. I just called him up and said, "Hey, can I play with you? Or can I play for you?" And he said, "Yeah, sure. Come on over." Set up a time and get over there. And I played, a few excerpts, and he said, "Yeah, man, I'll put your name in the. I'll recommend you to the personnel manager." And they called me for a few gigs, and I think it's just a matter of just letting people know that you're there, and you're likable. You show commitment to what you're doing. You're consistently good at what you do. You're consistently on time. Just the basics. Just like gig 101. Be on time. Comb your hair. Iron your shirt. You just be consistent with that, and it would surprise you how many people are sort of lacking in some of those areas. Mm-hmm. You just show that commitment. Specialize in something.
I like that.
You can't just say that I'm a trumpet player, because there's so many things that you can do on the trumpet. Be the best at one thing. Be that guy that everyone calls when they need this really specialized thing. Make yourself scarce. Scarcity is very important in getting gigs. So those are a few that come to the top of my mind.
That's cool. And again, you're talking mainly for individual musicians rather than kind of like a band type scenario, but really that would transfer across as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's probably applicable to either.
Yeah. What about the really important business concept of negotiation? Have you got any tips about, once you've got that gig, how do you negotiate, for instance, how much you're going to get paid, when you're going to get paid, what kind of conditions you're going to be working under, how long you're going to perform for, all those types of things. Have you got any advice for my listeners there?
I'm just going to be frank and say that I'm not the best person to talk with any authority on that.
That's okay. We'll move on then. What are some of the things? What are some of the pain points? Let's move more away from your trumpet podcast, because I think most of the people that are going to listen to this are probably more into the notion of musicpreneurship.
Sure.
And I love that term. I don't know if you've got that. It's good that you've got that domain name stitched up, because I know there's a few guys running around using it. But it's a really strong term, because I totally agree with you that musicians today need to be entrepreneurs. I suppose I'd like to ask you, James, what's your, or can you give a definition of what a music entrepreneur is and what it sort of involves in 2018?
Well, like the word musicpreneur, when I first started this business, I thought that I was going to like reinvent the wheel, so to speak, and like create a new type of person, like someone that calls themselves a musicpreneur, kind of like the Terminator type of thing. I just had this weird concept of, just really making something that is not. And the more that I talk to people on the podcast about being entrepreneurs and musicians, the more I realize that musicians have been entrepreneurs all along.
Yep.
Like, think about, let's say 100 years ago, here in the U.S., the top act, like like who's the top act in the U.S. today? Maybe let's say Justin Bieber. He's one of the top, right?
Sure.
Beyonce.
Yep.
One of the top acts in the world. Taylor Swift.
Jay-Z.
John Philip Sousa was the Jay-Z of his time. Have you heard of John Philip Sousa?
No, I'm an ignorant heavy metal drummer, remember?
That's right, and you're in Australia, so that's 2 strikes against you. But it's like, Sousa had this band, and they would travel from town to town and put on shows in the pavilion every night. And they were like the rock stars of the day. And it was just, they relied on fees, and they relied on appearance fees, just like musicians do today. And you think of the just the musicians, they've always been entrepreneurs by nature. And there's just this small window of time where musicians were allowed to have something that resembled a, quote, real job with the musicians' unions and some of these things that you see in the Hollywood studios or the symphony orchestras. They have some of these things, and in my opinion, it's a little unnatural. I think that musicians are not they're not designed that way. They're not wired that way to have that type of setup.
Is that because of the whole sort of left brain, right sort of brain, where your right side is your creativity and your intuition, where your left side is more analytical? Is that what you think? Why some musicians have a problem with that?
Well, when it comes to like having a union job, I think you definitely have to sacrifice some of your left brain activity, and you just have to give that up, and you just surrender your creativity so that you can keep your job, and that is very detrimental to musicians. But aside from this really small window of time, starting maybe in the 1940s to probably today, where things are starting to crumble, musicians have always been entrepreneurs.
Yep.
So it's not like this is a new concept. It's just, I think that musicians are rediscovering a concept that is as old as time itself. Sure, yeah.
And perhaps have to move away from, and this is, being a teacher for so many years in music diploma studies, I find a lot of very confident musicians, they think that they don't need to worry about that stuff because they're going to get a fantastic manager who's going to take care of all that for them. And I'm with you. I'm saying, well, that might actually be the case one day, but it's a great learning path to do it all yourself, and you'll be a much more informed and educated musicpreneur, and much less chance of getting ripped off too, I reckon.
Well, the thing about that is that the managers who take on new clients and the labels that take on new clients are the ones that have like a serious following on social media. So to think that they're going to do that for you is a fallacy. They're not. You have to do it on your own, and then you can enter into an agreement. And the musician definitely has a little more leverage than they did, say, 20 years ago.
Exactly.
When it comes to those relationships.
James, can you tell us some of your favorite or most inspirational guests you've had on your show? Anyone spring to mind?
Yeah. Let's see here. My very first guest was Aaron Bethune. Do you know that name?
No, sorry.
Okay. He wrote a book called Musicpreneur.
Nice.
And
what was his name, sorry?
Really, Aaron Bethune, Bethune. And really, really inspiring story. And that was like, I started out with this fantastic interview. I was still wet behind the ears as an interviewer. It wasn't great, but he carried the load, and he did a fantastic job. There have been so many where people just... I had a guy named John O'Reilly, who's a drummer. He's played with... what's that? Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
Okay.
And he just opened up to me right during the interview and said that he lost his wife a few years ago, and he's been in this depression, and now he's waking up out of it. And this is his first interview since his wife died, and I was like, he literally said on the interview, "This is my first time ever sharing this with anyone." I'm like, wow,
that's cool.
This is just like, you can't put money on that. Obviously, I do this because I want to make money, but it's like you can't buy that type of experience. A lady named Shannon Curtis she specializes in house concerts. Every summer she goes around the United States, and she just performs in people's houses, and that's a great business model that she's made work. Written a book about it. And actually last July they had an incident in Virginia involving the Ku Klux Klan. Wow. Have you heard of them?
I sure have.
Okay. All right. So you're not that ignorant in Australia.
We do get black and white TV down here sometimes.
Okay, so you get a newspaper every now and then.
On a rainy day, yeah.
Okay, all right. Anyway, they had this like KKK activity in Lynchburg, Virginia last July, and she performed a house concert 9 or 10 days after this thing, and the host of the concert was involved. She was there. She was helping injured people on both sides of the little skirmish, and just a really, really memorable interview. So
great.
It's just people just open up, and you just hear the power of music to touch not just the people who listen to it, but the people who make it. Mm-hmm. You just hear the passion, and it's like you just know that they are in their zone, and this is what they're meant to do, even though they're not following, quote, the plan.
Very good. James, is there any sort of, with all your guests, is there any kind of reoccurring knowledge about, I guess, how to be successful in the music industry or how to be a successful music entrepreneur? Is there any sort of reoccurring knowledge that you're extracting from your guests that you could pass on to my listeners?
The thing that comes immediately to mind is the word community. You have to build a community. The new, what do you call it? The musicpreneur business model, or business, let's call it a business model. Mm-hmm. Scott Page used to tour with Pink Floyd, was on the podcast, and he was describing this, and I agreed with him because it was my experience based on other conversations I'd had. But the people that are making it happen, the people that are successful and are quitting their jobs and doing music full time, are the ones that are just building real relationships with people that listen to their music. And you just listen to these guys talk about their experiences and friendships that they make with people that are listening to their music. They're their customers. I mean, they're paying them on Patreon or on Kickstarter, wherever. So these guys are like their customers, and they're an entrepreneur. But you just hear the love in their voice for these people, and these are the people that are making it, who embrace this concept of community. Like, I like to think of the musicpreneur as having a bunch of people over for dinner, and their music is the main course, or their music is the food. Mm-hmm. But really, it's not about the music. It's not about the turkey on Thanksgiving. It's about getting together, being around people that you like, sometimes don't like.
Yep.
But that's really why you do it, why you make music, is to get people together, people of like mind, of like interest. And if you're a musicpreneur, if you fancy yourself a musicpreneur, and you're just like, well, look what I can do. I'm going to impress people with my skills, or I'm going to, people are going to be in awe of my abilities. Not that there's anything wrong with wanting people to be in awe of, like, your drumming, for example. There's nothing wrong with that. But if that's the reason that you do it, you're not going to be successful. Mm-hmm. When your motive is to get people together, that is the key. And I hear that time after time on the podcast. The people that are making it happen embrace community.
That's cool. That's very cool. And I guess I'm imagining most people listening to this know that. But building the community is hard, isn't it? It's not necessarily easy. It takes a lot of work. And then again, it comes back to what I think is one of the most important attributes of a successful musicpreneur, and that's having a very strong work ethic, not only on your instrument, with your music, but also in your business.
Yeah, just people skills, like using those social media tools. That's all they are, is tools to build your tribe. Mm-hmm.
James, do you get much feedback from your audience, your listeners, your email subscribers? Do they give you much feedback? Because where I want to ask you is, do you get an idea of your audience and perhaps people who are listening to this, some of their main pain points as trying to become a musicpreneur?
I don't get as much as I would like. Yep. Sometimes I wonder, what am I doing wrong that my inbox isn't flooded with emails saying this, I want to hear this on the podcast. I want to hear that.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't get as much as I would like. The input that I get is like, this is a great show. I don't know, maybe I need to do a better job of just point blank asking, what are your pain points? What problem do you need me to solve with the podcast? And I would get more of that.
Yeah, possibly.
So I think, but I really, the feedback that I get is basically positive. So maybe that's a bad thing.
Yeah, well, that's cool. Well, you sort of already mentioned that on Trumpet Dynamics, it's about how to get a gig, and that's a big pain point for a lot of people. I guess I just wanted to ask you, do you have any other sense of any others that spring to mind that, because I'm looking as well for my podcast to try and serve my audience the best I can and give them stuff that they actually care about and want to hear about. And I'm just trying to pick your brain as somebody else that's speaking to a lot of music industry experts and professionals. Getting a gig is a good one, but any others that spring to mind? There's no big deal if it's not.
Well, there is one that springs to mind now that I think of it, and that is that when you're a musician and when music is coursing through your veins, just to use an illustration, but you've always thinking about music, right? Mm-hmm. You've always got a song in your head. You've always, maybe you're working on some lyrics for something. It's something that is always a part of you. And then to think of yourself as an entrepreneur, someone that sells that, it can be a little bit of a conflict of interest for people.
Sure.
And it's not like there's anything wrong with them, but you can understand how they would feel that way. How they would feel like if they're selling their music, then they're kind of dirtying themselves. Because selling has, let's face it, there's some sleazy people out there who sell and they get all the attention. But so the concept of selling their music, something that is so intensely personal, is a bit of a problem for some people, and it's been a problem for me too. But I think if you just, it just comes back to community. When you see yourself as just meeting a need, like you're meeting someone's need to, I don't know, just get out of the house. Maybe you're meeting someone's need they need an emotional lift. You're meeting a need. You're not selling something. You're not dirtying yourself. You are solving a problem. And, that's what entrepreneurship really is when you get right down to it. It's solving problems for a profit.
No, I like that. And I think you're right. I think a lot of musicians I know, myself included, and even now in the podcasting and the business world, selling can be both a real and a psychological barrier that you have to get over, because there are negative connotations about selling. I find even particularly Australians, we have a much different, and I'm generalising here massively, but I think we have a very different approach to it than, say, your fellow countrymen. Americans sort of seem to be more natural entrepreneurs and more natural salespeople, because that's their whole upbringing, and they believe in the American way of life and all that kind of thing. And I think here in Australia, we're getting much more influenced by you guys, and we're starting to accept that. But there's still a very much, you're a musician and you're putting this out there and you're pushing it and you're trying to, flog your stuff. God, that there's a kind of a tall poppy syndrome here in Australia. Do you have any comments on that? Or?
No, I absolutely understand where you're coming from. And I remember when I was in Korea, I just remember observing that even though South Korea is one of the most affluent nations in the world, I mean, the soul is just incredible. They have all the latest tech. Samsung is based there. Very, very wealthy, very affluent, but still they have literally thousands of years of tradition that dictate their behavior. Mm-hmm. And so even though like entrepreneurship is very prevalent there, they still have a lot of the ancient way of thinking that has been just a part of them. It's handed down from generation to generation for millennia. So, yeah, I guess the United States is it's still a relatively new country, and there has been that free enterprise. It's sort of more commonly accepted than other countries. So, yeah, I guess it's a little more tolerable, but you still have some serious barriers to overcome if you want to be successful, even in the land of the free.
The land of the free, yes. Well,
the land of the sometimes free.
Yeah, some crazy stuff going on over there, it seems. But
yes,
we probably don't want to go down that path.
No, I don't.
James, it's been great to talk to you, mate. I've really enjoyed connecting with you. Like you had me on your show the other day, which was a blast. And there was some interesting stuff happening on social media there, because you gave me a bit of a hard time about being a drummer, but I thought that was pretty funny.
Well, I don't see anything wrong with telling the truth.
What's the truth, James? Let's hear it again.
Oh, I don't remember. I remember someone got offended at something that I said in the interview, and I was like, what did I say? All I said was, I honestly don't remember what I said, but I don't remember saying anything derogatory about drummers, aside from the obvious that they're a bunch of knuckle-dragging losers. But aside from that, I don't know. Yeah,
well, I think one of the people in my tribe who likes me, they thought that perhaps you were having a dig, and it wasn't just a joke, but it was all in good fun. I guess I wanted to ask you, James, just to finish the interview. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you'd like to express to my audience, other than going and checking out, of course, your podcast at musicpreneur.com?
Yeah, I would love people to check out an episode. I've got a little download for you guys. It's basically just a 1-page, maybe 2-page PDF of memorable quotes from the podcast that have stuck out to me and that I think will be of value to you. So free, if you call, handing over your email address, free. But yeah, I would just like you guys to come check it out. And I'm just going to put it out right now. I'm going to take action. Tell me your pain point. Tell me what issue I need to address on the Musicpreneur podcast. Look at that. Took care of it.
Very good, very good.
Took care of business.
Well, I would recommend my listeners go and check out a couple of episodes. I certainly have. And there's some good stuff there. Some very interesting stuff. Yes. James Newcomb from Trumpet Dynamics and the Musicpreneur podcast, podcasting 5 days a week, you freak. Thanks so much for being a guest on the Music Business Facts podcast. I appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you, Rodney, and I appreciate all that you do, and I feel unqualified to be on your show.
Not at all, champ. All right, mate, all the best, and have a good evening in North Carolina. What are you going to do for the rest of the night?
I'm going to give my son some dinner, put him to bed, and then I've got a website to design.
Nice one. All right, James, we'll connect soon. Take care, buddy.
You got it.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. James Newcomb from musicpreneur.com. Go and check out his site, check out his podcast, and I am sure that you can learn something from him and some of the great conversations he's had with some of his cool guests over there. And just like we talked about in the interview, I'm going to ask you guys, what is it that you need help with in your music business? What are your pain points, and what are the most, what are the main things that you're struggling with your career, with your business, with getting the traction that you want, getting to where you want to be? I really do want to know, because I'm very passionate about trying to help you guys with the answers. And very soon, I'm getting excited. I'm about to offer an entire series of free online music business training, and I'd really love your input into what you'd like me to cover. So I've already started building my video library, and there's some stuff on there that I know that you guys need to know, whether you know that or not. So, I'm going to be covering things like copyright fundamentals and, the intricacies of writing music with other people, general business skills, negotiation techniques, conflict resolution, introduction to contracts and the different types of contracts, music publishing, synchronization deals and how to try and get them, understanding different types of label deals, mechanical royalties, all that essential stuff that you need to know to function successfully as a music business. And what I want from you guys is, if you've got a question, anything you'd like me to cover, please hit me up, rodney@musicbusinessfacts.com. And the best questions, I haven't put a cap on this, so we'll see how we go, but the best questions that come through, I'm going to give some people a one-on-one coaching call with me. So you've got nothing to lose, everything to gain, and hopefully I'll get to speak with you as well, and we can do a live coaching call and maybe even record it. And if you're interested, maybe even it might end up on the podcast. All right, so some cool things coming up. I hope you're excited, because I certainly am. Anyhow, that's it for today's show, and today's quote is one that I really, really love. I've used this one before, but it's about entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship is living years of your life like most people won't, so you can spend the rest of your life like most people can't. That's the dream. That's the hustle. That's why many of us are doing this. That's what we're striving for, and I hope you are too. I hope you like that one. Until next time, guys, it's Rodney Holder here, signing off for musicbusinessfacts.com. Take care.
You've been listening to the Music Business Facts podcast. For more essential music business tips and information, visit musicbusinessfacts.com.